Our attendance has stabilized here, so you should have just received an alert that a recording of the session has started. Welcome and good morning, everyone. My name is Kat Lau. I am a director with the Broadband and Digital Equity team at HRNA Advisors. We are supporting the ConnectALL office in the implementation of the ConnectALL deployment program. So I will be taking you through all the details of our pre-qualification application this morning. Thanks everyone for joining. I see lots of familiar names in the chat or in the participants list, and excited and grateful for all of you for your interest in this program. So let's get started. Some housekeeping items before we jump into the content. So as I just said, this session is being recorded. We will be emailing out the recording as well as these slides to everyone who's registered for today's session. We will also be posting these materials to the ConnectALL website at broadband.ny.gov. Any important links that we mentioned throughout the session, we will post in the meeting chat, and any of those links that we share will also get sent out in that follow-up email. The purpose, one of the purposes of today is for us to gather your questions. So please submit questions using the Zoom Q&A function. You can see the little graphic here on the slide. It shows you the button to press in your bottom Zoom toolbar to submit questions through that function. You can also submit questions via email to connectalldeployment@esd.ny.gov. And I know we've already gotten a few questions through that email address, so thank you to those who have submitted already. We will be taking all of the questions in today. We will not be answering anything live during this session, but we will take all those questions in and we will be posting a big batch of answers to your questions to the ConnectALL website within the next few days. So I think we'll notify folks when that goes live via email as well, but just keep an eye on that website for any updates as well. So jumping into some content, we're going to first do just a quick overview of ConnectALL and the ConnectALL initiative. For anyone who has attended one of our virtual forums or information sessions before, these will be familiar slides to you. But ConnectALL is Governor Hochul's initiative to transform New York's digital infrastructure through targeted investments in broadband and digital equity. So the ConnectALL initiative was established in 2022, and the governor established 5 signature programs that the ConnectALL office is responsible for implementing. So today we're focusing on the ConnectALL deployment program, which I'll speak about more in just a second. But the other 4 signature programs run by this office include the Affordable Housing Connectivity Program, which focuses on deploying broadband to affordable housing properties across the state, the Digital Equity Program, which focuses on making sure New Yorkers have the digital skills and access to devices that they need to take advantage of digital technology, the Connectivity Innovation Program, which will provide funding to pilot and test new and emerging broadband technologies, and the Municipal Infrastructure Program, which focuses on deployment of publicly owned assets in communities around the state. ConnectALL is focused on 3 major goals, and these are codified in state legislation in the Wired Broadband Act, which is actually the piece of legislation that established the office. So our 3 primary goals are to connect all residents and businesses in New York to high-speed, reliable, and affordable broadband, develop a robust and competitive internet marketplace, and foster a statewide mobilization and partnerships between state, regional, county, local, and tribal governments, as well as private, nonprofit, and academic entities to address the digital divide. So everything the ConnectALL office does is aimed at these 3 goals, and the ConnectALL deployment program is going to be one of the office's major initiatives to forward progress on these. So the ConnectALL deployment program is focused on addressing unserved and underserved locations across New York State. And as defined by the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, unserved locations are locations that either have no broadband service or the only service they have access to is slower than 25 megabit per second download and 3 megabit per second upload speeds. Underserved locations are defined as locations with service that's faster than that, but slower. Oh, someone came off mute for a second there, so I will mute them. Sorry about that. Underserved locations are defined as locations with service faster than that, but slower than 100 megabit per second download and 20 megabit per second upload. And locations that have service faster than that are considered served. So the ConnectALL deployment program is specifically focused on those unserved and underserved locations. And the state has allocated just shy of $700 million to deploy broadband to those locations. About $650 million of that allocation comes from the Federal Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, also known as BEAD. And based on the requirements of that program, it is that unserved and underserved designation on the FCC National Broadband Map that determines eligibility for program funding. So currently, FCC's National Broadband Map shows about 95,000 unserved and underserved locations in New York, which we will seek to address through the ConnectALL deployment program. As some of you may know and may be active participants in, we are currently finishing up a challenge process to where various entities have submitted corrections to that data to help us refine that number and get to a more accurate list of locations that we need to serve through this program. So getting into the actual pre-qualification application, some of you have probably already reviewed this document, but this is now available for download on the ConnectALL website at broadband.ny.gov. If you go to that website, and Rose has put the direct link to this in the chat, but if you go to that website under funding opportunities, you can find a page specifically for the deployment program where you can find all of these materials and where we will continue to post materials as the program evolves. So one kind of disclaimer note before we get into all of the application content, which is that this pre-qualification application is based on the subgrantee selection process that is outlined in ConnectALL's BEAD Initial Proposal Volume 2. This is a document that we prepared for the National Telecommunications and Information Administration describing how we will run our program, and it is currently pending final approval from NTIA. So although this is unlikely, it is possible that through that final approval process, some changes may be made to the initial proposal that could affect the content of this. Oh, sorry, Roy, I'm going to put you on mute. It is possible that through that final approval process, some changes may be made that might affect the content of the pre-qualification application. In the unlikely event that happens, we will notify everyone who is registered for the pre-qualification application, and we will issue an addendum. So keep an eye out for any notifications of that. But we do believe, as we've gone through the approval process with NTIA, the content of this pre-qualification application is very unlikely to change. So the deployment program subgrantee selection process is going to unfold in 2 stages. The first is the pre-qualification application stage that we're in right now, and the second will be a request for applications in the fall. So the goal of the pre-qualification application is to establish threshold qualifications of prospective eligible subgrantees or eligible applicants to the program ahead of that request for applications or RFA in the fall. And the RFA will be where you actually are applying for funding for specific project areas for specific projects in specific geographic locations across the state. But this pre-qualification application is not specific to any particular geography. It is just about establishing your threshold qualifications as a participant in the program. Eligible applicants to the program include corporations, local units of government, regional planning boards, local development corporations, not-for-profits, as well as new consortia or partnerships that are created by multiple entities specifically for the purposes of participating in this program. If you are in that latter scenario, if it's a new consortium or partnership for the purposes of the ConnectALL deployment program, there should just be identified one single lead entity who will be the entity that actually applies to the pre-qualification application. Then again, going back to that 2-step process, successful applicants who get pre-qualified through this process will then be eligible to apply for grant funding through the RFA that will be reissued in the fall. Everyone who applies to the RFA must go through ConnectALL's pre-qualification process. The strong recommendation is that you go through the pre-qualification process now. However, it is going to be an available option. So it is going to be an available option at the time of the RFA for you to also submit pre-qualification materials as part of your RFA response. So if we do get to the fall and your entity has not gone through the pre-qualification application process, that's okay. You can still get pre-qualified and go through the RFA. But it is our strong recommendation that you basically take care of those pre-qualification requirements ahead of time. And that the intention behind that is really just to spread out the work, both on your side in terms of preparing and submitting documents, and also on our side in terms of application review, because as we'll get into in just a second, there is a lot of content in the pre-qualification application, and there will be a lot of content in the request for applications in the fall. And so to the extent possible that we can separate these two things, I think it will make life a lot easier, both on the applicant side and for the ConnectALL office. So strongly recommended that you, if you plan to participate in the RFA in the fall, that you participate in the pre-qualification application now. So getting into the content of the actual pre-qualification application, this is essentially just a restatement of what you will find in the actual document that's posted on our website. But as you can see, there are several different sections to complete covering all different aspects of applicant qualifications. So under the applicant profile section, it will be basic details about your entity, a description of your organizational structure. If you are a consortium or a partnership, this will be where you explain to us who the other members are and what their different roles are. And then you will provide some brief descriptions of your experience and qualifications. Under the operational capability section, we will be asking for details on how long you have been operating in New York State, as well as other states, if you operate in other states. We will also be asking for details on what services you offer in those locations, as well as certifications that you have the capabilities and capacity and resources to participate in this program. Under managerial capability, we will be asking for details on key personnel who might be involved in a ConnectALL deployment program project. We will also be asking for more details on specific aspects of your organizational experience. We will ask for resumes, an org chart, and any potential subcontractors that you may plan to use. Under technical capability, we will be asking for details on any technical certifications and licenses that your organization holds, either in New York State or nationally. Under financial capability, we will be requesting details on how you will comply with the program's requirements related to financial security. Those are letters of credit and/or performance bonds. We will be requesting audited financial statements, as well as certifications that you possess the financial resources to participate in the program, in a funded project through this program. Under other public funding, we will be requesting details on your past experiences working with government for broadband deployment and whether there have been any issues in the past with completing government-funded broadband projects. We will also be asking for information on current publicly funded broadband programs that you are participating in, as well as any future publicly funded broadband programs that you are currently planning to participate in. Under labor standards and protections, we will be asking about your track record with complying with federal and state labor and employment laws. And under workforce readiness, we will be asking for lots of qualitative details on your organization's labor practices and workforce practices related to training, recruiting, hiring, unionization, employee engagement, other topics. Under the MWBE and labor surplus area section, we will be requesting details on your organization's general approach to involving minority, women-owned, and labor surplus area businesses in your work, and what your approach will be to ensuring that the participation goals that ConnectALL will apply to projects will be met. Under natural hazard risk mitigation, we will be looking for details on your experience and approach towards natural hazard risk mitigation. Under the low-cost service options section, we will be requesting confirmation that you can and will comply with ConnectALL's low-cost service option, which is defined in our initial proposal, in our BEAD initial proposal. And then the remaining sections are all compliance certifications. So there are some specific ones on cybersecurity and supply chain risk management, but otherwise the rest are certifying compliance with various state and federal laws and a couple of legal disclosures. So a quick look at the timeline for the pre-qualification application. It is currently open and we do not have a deadline. We're going to be reviewing and accepting and reviewing applications on a rolling basis. Following the approval of our BEAD initial proposal, volume 2 by NTIA, we will establish a final application deadline for the pre-qualification. But until we receive that approval, it is open-ended. So when we receive approval and establish that final deadline, we will notify everyone of that deadline with a minimum of 30 days notice. But between now and then, we will have an open period where folks can apply and we will review those applications on a rolling basis. This whole schedule is planned to primarily roll out over the course of the summer and into the early fall. Following the final deadline for this pre-qualification application, we will announce the status. We will notify everyone who has applied of whether or not they were successfully pre-qualified within 30 days of that final deadline. And then, as I said, in the fall, we plan to release the request for applications for the ConnectALL deployment program. And again, if you have not yet been pre-qualified by that point, you would have another opportunity there to submit your pre-qualification materials. For evaluation of applications, we will be looking at everything for eligibility and alignment with program requirements. We are not going to be scoring on a point scale or anything. The vast majority of submissions here, the one exception to that is that the submissions related to fair labor standards and workforce readiness will be evaluated and scored as part of the RFA process. And so if you go through this pre-qualification process, those submissions will be retained and we will look at them and score them as part of your later RFA response. But the rest of the components of the pre-qualification application will essentially be evaluated on a pass-fail, eligible or not eligible basis. Pre-qualification does not guarantee a grant award, nor does pre-qualification obligate you to respond to the RFA. So this still is a two-step process, and you must participate in both steps in order to get funding through the program. So just because you're pre-qualified, does not give you a pass through the RFA phase, and then also you do have the ability to not participate in the RFA phase if you prefer. And then just restating again, everyone who is interested in getting ConnectALL deployment program funds must go through the pre-qualification process at some point, whether that happens now during the pre-qualification application or later as part of your RFA response. Okay, so now getting into the nitty-gritty of how to apply. Applications must go through the New York State Consolidated Funding Application, or CFA portal. This is where we run all of the ConnectALL grant programs. So some of you who have participated in the existing programs that have already been launched may have already been registered in here. But you can create an account by registering at the website shown on this slide, and Rose has just dropped it in the chat as well. And once you create your account, you will receive an email that will give you a token or password to get into the portal. Once you are logged in, you will see an option to create a new application, and you will put in a project name, your business name, and your email. The project name is really just for your reference only, but we recommend naming it with pre-qualification in the title so that you can clearly reference it, especially if you are planning on participating in multiple ConnectALL programs. This will be easier to find in the portal for you. To begin your application, you will click into the application that you just created, and then you will go and select a program to associate it with in the portal. So our pre-qualification application is currently listed in the portal under the header Other NYS Programs. You will see a number of different ConnectALL programs there, but our program is ConnectALL Deployment Program Pre-Qualification Application. So you will check this box and then proceed in the portal. This will take you into the application itself. So the application begins with a couple of threshold questions. These are super simple. It just confirms that you are applying to the correct program and that you have read and reviewed any addenda to the program. So once you answer yes to both of those, you'll be able to proceed with the rest of the application. If you're not able to answer yes to the threshold questions, then you're actually not able to move forward. Next, you will see a screen called Project Location. This page is not relevant to pre-qualification. So you can, but it is unfortunately a required page in the portal. So you can just select any region and proceed with your application to continue. But we recognize that pre-qualification applications are not necessarily going to be location specific. So that's why this page is not going to be relevant for us. Next, you will see the documents and questionnaires pages, and those are the vast majority of the content for the application here. So every question that requires an attachment to be uploaded is going to be found in the Documents tab, and all the rest of the questions where you might be entering text responses are going to be found in the Questionnaire tab. Note that there are some linkages between these two sections of the application. So there are some attachments that are only going to be required based on certain answers to the narrative questions. And so you do have the ability to toggle back and forth between the documents and questionnaire tabs as needed as you're working on your application. But we do strongly recommend that you read through the entirety of both of these pages before you get started, just so that you know which of the attachments are going to be relevant to you and which of the narrative questions are going to be relevant to you. There is some conditional logic embedded in the application. So depending on what your answers are going to be, there may be more or less requirements on either or both tabs. So definitely do review that before you start writing your answers. Once you have completed all of the application content, you will then move forward to the Review tab, and you're going to see another map where you have to select a location. Again, this is not relevant for the pre-qualification, but is a requirement of the portal. So just select any point on the map and you can continue. This page will then populate a checklist for you at the bottom to show that all the required sections of the application have been completed. Once you have confirmed that everything is complete and showing up correctly, there will be an acknowledgement button at the bottom of the screen, and you'll be able to submit your application from this page. Once you have submitted, you will not be able to make changes. So please do double check everything, go back and edit answers if you need to, do all of that before you submit. Now, as for how we will be reviewing, as I said, these are going to be accepted on a rolling basis for now, but we will notify everyone of the final application deadline as soon as it is established, again, based on NTIA's approval of our initial proposal volume 2. So we will send out those notifications with a minimum of 30 days notice for that deadline. Anyone who submits incomplete or erroneous materials will be notified of any deficiencies in their application. You will be given an opportunity to revise and cure those applications up until the final application deadline. However, we need a little bit of buffer time in order to actually look at your materials and tell you if there are deficiencies. So we are only going to be able to offer that curing and revision opportunity to applicants who submit materials at least 7 calendar days before the final application deadline. So definitely encourage you to get materials in as early as possible. If you are too close to that final deadline, we won't have time to look at your materials in time to tell you if there's something that you need to correct. And so that could then result in an unsuccessful pre-qualification. So we don't want that. Make sure to submit your information as early as possible. Okay, with that, we will allow questions here. And please do submit those through the Zoom Q&A feature, or you can feel free to send to connectall.deployment@esd.ny.gov if your question is longer, a little more involved, or you want to just take some more time to think about it. We are making note of all of the questions submitted here. As I said at the top, we're not going to answer any of them live today, but we are taking all of them in, and we will include answers in an update to be posted on the ConnectALL website in the coming days. And I'm seeing a few questions coming in already, so thank you to those who are submitting there. Please continue to submit, and I will just touch on a couple last pieces here. So This slide kind of summarizes all of the different resources available to you and all the important links for this application. So again, available on our website on the pre-qualification application page. You can download the application document, you can download the appendices, and you can download all of the different Excel templates that you will need for your application on that website. The link to the portal is here again in the second row. This is where your application will need to be submitted. Again, some of you may already be registered there, but if you are not, please create an account as soon as possible. The application instructions and checklist, that's one of the documents available for download on our website, but that can be a helpful kind of handy at a glance summary of everything that's going to be required for your application. So highly recommend that you make use of that. And again, the ConnectALL deployment at esd.ny.gov email address is available to you for any questions, not just at this initial information session stage, but as the program continues, this will be the email address we use for all correspondence related to the deployment program. Okay, so next steps and another kind of view of the timeline here. So the pre-qualification application is currently open in the Consolidated Funding Application portal. The slides and the recording from today's information session will be posted on the website, as well as answers to your questions. Moving into July and August, late summer, we will be starting to review applications on a rolling basis. We will establish and then notify everyone of the final application deadline with a minimum 30 days notice. And we will notify folks of their pre-qualification status within 30 days after the final application deadline. So that's the very latest you would hear. But since we will be reviewing applications on a rolling basis, we do anticipate we'll be notifying people kind of along the way. And just noting again that final application deadline, we will establish with a minimum 30 days notice, but that it's a point in the future where we're going to establish that deadline. So the overall application period is going to end up being longer than 30 days because we're open already. And then getting into September, we plan to publish the program request for applications. So that will be when you're able to review all the specific project areas and actually put together proposals for funding for those projects. So continuing to see questions coming through. So we will leave this session open for a little longer just for anyone else to submit as needed. But please do continue to keep an eye on broadband.ny.gov for updates on this program and others. We continue to post information on our upcoming events there, and we will be posting all relevant updates for this program, including addenda, the establishment of the final application deadline, et cetera, on that website as well. So definitely keep an eye on that. And we will also send emails out to folks who are registered for this session with those relevant updates. And that is what we have to go through today. So thank you all for your attention and time. As I said, we'll leave this open for another couple minutes here for anyone else who wants to submit questions for us to address in our Q&A. But again, also feel free to email us at connectalldeployment@esd.ny.gov at any point during the session. If you come up with more questions later, feel free to send to that inbox as well. Or if your question is just longer than what the Zoom box here can accommodate, no problem. All right, so I'll pause there, and maybe we'll leave this Zoom open maybe till, let's say, 11:35 or so. So continue to use that Zoom Q&A function, and we will publish those answers within the next few days. And thank you everyone for your attention and time and your interest in the ConnectALL deployment program.